What is going on, beautiful people? I hope you are having an amazing day. Today we are going to talk about the pros and cons of living in Thornton, Colorado. And hey, if this is your first time to the channel and you are interested in learning a little bit more about Denver, maybe some of the surrounding suburbs, such like Thornton that we're going to talk about today, make sure and hit the subscribe button down below, hit the bell icon for notifications. This way you can be the first to know about any videos I come out with, and you can learn about the Denver market and what's going on, and maybe some few other things that you might find interesting. If you don't already know, my name is Michael, and I get people reaching out all the time. You know, they're making a move to Denver or some of the surrounding areas, and they just need a little bit of help. They don't really know where to start. That's kind of where I come in, kind of helping people. So if that's you, whether it's next week, in a month, 2 years, whatever it may be, my contact information is below. You can shoot me a call, give me a text, write me an email, whatever you prefer. I will help you in whatever way I can and make that transition as smooth as possible. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. So for those of you that don't know, Thornton, Colorado is kind of on the north side of Denver. It's just a little bit outside of downtown Denver. So you might drive 10 minutes north of kind of that area and boom, you're in Thornton. It goes kind of wild, and there's a few towns, cities mixed in between Thornton, but for the most part it's just kind of this large blob above Denver, if you were curious kind of where it's at. I actually personally lived in Thornton. Well, technically it was North Glen, Colorado, but North Glen is like this tiny little city inside of Thornton. And I lived there for about a year and I loved it. They have great food up there, plenty of shopping. The only drawback I'd say, and we'll get into that later, is you're just a little bit outside the city. So if you're commuting downtown, you're gonna probably run into a little bit of traffic. But for the most part, I really enjoyed living there. And I'm sure most people, if they're coming to Denver for the first time, it's not a bad place to start. But let's get right into the pros. The first pro I usually like to talk about is affordability, and Thornton's probably one of the most affordable spots in Denver, or just like around Denver. Thornton, and then you have Aurora, but Thornton's just kind of a different area, but very similar price point. The median household is right around $575,000 for a single family home, which compared to Denver and some of the surrounding areas is pretty good, especially because that's the median. So you're gonna still find things in the upper 4s and low 5s, which for Denver is pretty good. So if you're moving here on a budget, or you don't want to get anything too expensive right now, then Thornton might be a good place to look. The community's growing, so I imagine values will kind of just go up with that, especially as more and more people are moving, looking for affordable housing. The demand for those affordable homes are going to continue to go upwards. Another great thing about Thornton is just the access to outdoor activities, trails, parks, stuff like that. You're going to find them scattered all over the place. So if you're someone that just likes to get outside a little bit and you don't want to go too far for something of that sort, then Thornton's going to have it. Most places around are going to be, I wouldn't say busy, but pretty well traveled. So everything gets a lot of use around there, and they maintain it pretty well too. The other nice thing is you're relatively close to Denver, so you're not going to have to commute too far if you're going down south. I will say if you hit the timing wrong, you're probably gonna run into a little bit of traffic, but you're right on I-25, so if you're going anywhere up and down there, you can hop on there and just kind of get where you're going. Especially if you're going up north to Fort Collins, again, same thing, zip on up there and you're right there. I will say the traffic is always usually really bad between Thornton and Fort Collins, just because it seems like they're always doing road work. I know for the longest time it was Colorado Springs to Denver was always doing road work, but now it seems like that's calmed down. But going north all the way to Fort Collins is usually just awful when it comes to traffic. They're always doing something on a huge span of road, and they just never get it taken care of. But if you're kind of going down south, not too bad of a drive. The next thing I'll touch on is the restaurant choices. You're gonna have pretty much all the chain restaurants you could possibly think of in Thornton. So whatever you're craving, they're gonna have it. And on top of that, they're also gonna have a lot of mom and pop, hole in the wall, like one-off shops, and they're just amazing. They, the restaurants that just say pizza in the big red letters that, there's no logos or anything. There's a ton of those up there, and they're just amazing. It's just great places to get pizza, plenty of good taco places. You're gonna find just all these little hole in the wall places, and don't be afraid to go into them. They're delicious and they're everywhere. So highly recommend it if you're looking for some food choices. Just drive around a little bit. Don't even get on your Google Maps or whatever. Just drive around and find the most subtle restaurant you can find and hit that place up, and you're gonna be pretty happy. The last thing I'll mention is kind of a cheat answer because it's not technically in Thornton, Colorado, but it's pretty much right there. Technically it's in Federal Heights, but Waterworld, probably the best water park in the United States. I mean, you definitely can argue with a few others. I've only been to Waterworld, so I can only say that, but it is an amazing water park. You can spend, I highly recommend getting the season pass and go multiple times a year. Usually the weekdays are a lot less busy, so if you can take a day off work or you have a day off, or maybe your schedule is lined up, go during the week because it's gonna be a lot less busy. But amazing rides, it's a great day to take the family. The food it's arguable, but I think it's pretty decent. They get a little pizza, family packs, you get a drink and a pizza and your ticket. It's a whole combo, but it makes a great day. It's very family friendly, especially if you have little kids. They have little kid parks, and they also have attractions for older adults. So I don't know, if you're ever in the area in the summer, I highly recommend hitting the Waterworld. But the nice thing about Thornton is it's right there. So if you're living there in the summer, get the season pass. It's definitely worth it. You'll be there all summer if you can. It's a long day and you're gonna be beat up after it, so it's gonna be tiresome, but you're gonna enjoy it, and it's gonna be a good time. All right, let's get into the cons. All right, the first one, and it's probably gonna be the most obvious when you go there, is it's a very developing city. So you're gonna have a lot of construction going on throughout the entire area. You're not gonna go too far without seeing some sort of development going on. But for the most part, I mean, it's gonna be scattered. It's not like one section is getting developed and this section's left alone. I mean, it's all together and mixed around. So, one neighborhood could be really nicely put together, and the next neighborhood might be like they haven't done anything in like 40 years. Especially some of the newer communities are gonna have HOAs, and the older communities don't have HOAs. So if you're looking for somewhere that doesn't have many restrictions, Thornton might be a good place for you. But with that comes a lot of people that don't necessarily care about taking care of their property, and it's just kind of like that. So you're gonna hit some neighborhood, you're gonna be like, whoa, what happened here? And the next neighborhood right over is all being developed, and it's like really nice. So it's a little bit scattered, but for the most part, it's just developing. You're gonna run into a lot of construction, a little bit more construction noise, and sometimes you're just gonna run into a little bit of traffic just because they're either working on the roads or putting something up, or just something's going on. The next thing I'll touch on is some of the older areas where everything's just kind of mushed together. It's pretty densely populated. Now, if you go up north, I think everything's a little bit more spread out. People have a little bit larger properties and things aren't built so close together. But right kind of as you leave Denver and get into Thornton, when they started trying to cram in, homes for people as Denver was expanding, it gets a little bit denser. So everything's gonna be a little bit tighter and just a little bit more crammed. And maybe that's something that you enjoy, being around a lot of people, but some people kind of like a little bit of space from their neighbor. So depending on that, I'd say it's probably more of a negative than a positive, but that's to each individual, and to each their own. And the last thing I'll touch on, and I know I mentioned this earlier as kind of a pro that you're close to Denver, but I guess it depends on where you're at in Thornton, because you can be on the very north side of Thornton and you're going to be commuting 45-50 minutes, and then if you hit traffic, maybe even a little bit longer. I'd say the majority of people kind of live a little bit closer to Denver, but depending on where you're at, you might have a little bit longer commute, and it might be a little bit harder to get to things in Denver, especially if you're going to a game, or if you're going all the way down south to Red Rocks for a concert, you have a little bit longer of a drive. I will say if you kind of avoid the heavy traffic periods, then you hop on I-25 and you're gonna fly down that thing. People tend to, it doesn't tend to clog up as much during the off hours, but depending on when you leave, that's gonna kind of affect how bad your drive is. If you're a little bit closer, you're not gonna have a hard time at all, I'd say. But if you're on the north end, then that might just be something to consider when you're looking at Thornton, especially because some of the northern places are a little bit more affordable, just because they're a little bit further out from the city, and as the further you go out, the cheaper things usually get, especially kind of in Thornton and Aurora area. And another quick thing that I actually just noticed this when I lived there, it's not very consistent in Thornton. So kind of like how it's developing in certain areas. Some areas are really well developed, some areas are not. So I mean, you're going down the road and it's gonna change really quickly. So it's just a little bit inconsistent. So the feel isn't very the same as you go through. It kind of changes pretty quickly. And so you're not gonna really feel like this area is better than this area. I like this area more than this area. It's all going to be kind of, you know, you kind of have to accept it as a whole rather than each individual spot, because a street over is going to be very different from a street over in some places. And you're just going to kind of have to get used to that in Thornton, just because, you know, they're doing a lot of work in certain areas, and other areas they're just not doing a lot of work. So just one of those things that you just kind of have to accept when you're living in the area. But with all that being said, I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to living in Thornton. I'd say the biggest pro is that it's very affordable. So if you're kind of just starting out and you're looking to get something small, Thornton's a great place to start and stop renting and build that equity. But for the most part, plenty of pros, plenty of cons. The other good thing is lots of good food, but at the same time, there's a lot of things holding it back. But hopefully you found this video interesting and, you know, maybe learned a thing or two and decided whether or not maybe Thornton's for you or maybe it's not for you. And don't forget, if you are planning on moving here anytime soon, maybe next week, next month, next year, who knows. My contact information is below, so don't hesitate to reach out. You can text me, call me, send me a letter, whatever you want to do. I'd be happy to help make whatever transition as smooth as possible and answer any questions. But until then, I will see you guys later.